two parents email me very specific questions, and I figured, let me combine them into one complex case and kind of walk you through the thinking of, okay, what is the strategy and what are the tactics? So what I have here is I combined the two. So just remember, this is two kids, and we're just going to combine them because it's a good exercise to go through to understand how you want to think about autism and how you want to think about navigating health challenges in autism. In the beginning, lots of doctors will tell you, oh, there's nothing wrong, or you do some tests and everything comes back normal. But your intuition, you just know something's not right, health-wise, right? So you don't want your child to live the rest of their lives with some type of nagging health issue. So when you're in that kind of mode of, all right, let me try and figure this out, this live will be very relevant for you. So we'll go through that. So both kids are around 8 years old. And so we have a frat test that was positive. We have an organic acid test that I don't know all the details. I didn't see any of these, any tests or anything like that. It was just, one was comments on my YouTube channel. So definitely please comment. And then the other was an email, but there's no attachment. So I didn't physically see anything. So the organic acid test was, all that was mentioned was that the neurotransmitters were off, in particular dopamine. But I have no knowledge if everything else was great or if there were other issues as well. And if either of those parents are here, actually, I'll keep an eye on the comment section. If either of those parents are here, feel free to jump in and give us more detail if you feel it's appropriate. Okay, then there are methylation issues. I don't have details on exactly what that is, but the mom is working on certain deficiencies. And then the child gets sick. I wasn't quite sure if it was often, like, does this happen, every 6 weeks or something like that? But there was, I think it was in October, the child got sick. It stalled the progress. They said the child was happy and like engaged and enjoyable, and like just enjoying. And then when they got sick, it stalled the progress. But then as time went on, you could see that there was a setback. So those days of being happy became very, very few. So there really was a regression based upon getting sick. So the mom is saying that the regression, the trigger for that regression was getting sick. And then there's also constipation that is involved in all of this, right? And so I don't know if this is particular type, if this is, right, like all our kids are different. So you might hear one aspect that is like, oh yes, okay, that's relevant to my child, but then the rest isn't. So just really be mindful of the issues that your child is struggling with, and you want to be very specific towards that. So you don't want to get too off base. I see what happens a lot with different parents is they try a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and I get it. But then that's where there's no strategy. That's where the strategy is think and just hope that it works. And that's not the best way to go about working on health for your child. So we'll get into it a little bit. I do want to say, if you see me drinking from this cup, this is the new merchandise on our channel. I speak fluid meltdown. That is very relevant. So if you are interested in supporting the channel and taking back some power, we have magnets. This is usually on my filing cabinets over there. I like it. It's kind of a badge of honor, I have to say, because I do speak fluent meltdown. I do. because the whole experience, with life and my daughter. But then I have to admit, I have meltdowns myself. So not only do I understand it, I can speak it, right? So I speak fluent. Meltdown is definitely for sure. This one is a sticker. We have t-shirts and hats. I can't wait to wear this in the summer. It's a badge of honor. So I understand what it's like to be a parent and have a child have a meltdown at home, in public, just anywhere. But I also understand what it's like to be a parent and then also have a meltdown yourself. I used to have a rule where we both can't have a meltdown at the same time. One meltdown per person at the time in our family, because two meltdowns, that is a disaster. So that is certainly something to pick up, because along the way, you are going to have confidence in yourself as you navigate all this process in autism. And we love our kids, right? So we do love them when they're having the meltdowns, but it certainly is challenging. And I want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge the strength and the power it takes to remain calm and to have diligence to say, all right, let's figure this out. What is this, right? Was it something like behavior-wise that was a trigger? Is it really health-related? So I haven't met anyone who particularly enjoys the meltdown, whether it's the parent or the child. So whenever there is a meltdown, you really want to start to understand, okay, what is causing it, and really get at that issue. That's where the focus is. But definitely be proud. I speak fluent meltdown for sure. So I understand where you're coming from. All right, let's get back to the case study. All right, a little more details is I'm going to say both children have no speech. I didn't get confirmation on the other parent as to whether speech is an issue, but if the FRAT is positive, I'm going to assume speech is an issue. There's addiction to the iPad, and then there's a lot of audio stimming. And so the audio stimming increases when the child gets sick and you have that setback. Okay, so we'll go through the questions that the parents had, and I'll kind of talk through strategy, right? Because this might be you. Maybe you did a little test here and a little test there, and you're just trying to make sense of it all. So this would be my suggestion for strategy. The question from the parent was how to strengthen immunity without 100 supplements. Okay, so that's getting to, all right, when my child gets sick, there's a huge setback. Many times that is indicative of PANS or PANDAS, right? It depends on the actual trigger as to what the name is. And so if you want to strengthen immunity, right, this is, I'm in strategy right now. If you want to strengthen immunity, you want to think, what is causing the immune system to be so vulnerable, right? For a cold, just a typical regular cold, how can that set the child back 2 months, right? So yeah, you want to strengthen the immune system, totally get it, understand. When you're in the moment post the infection and you're in the regression, yes, you've got to work on certain in the moment tactics, but strategically, right, you want to start thinking, what is causing that immune system to be worn down, right? And so that's the strategy you want to think. That's a long term, right? That's not going to help in the moment, but it will help long term so that this isn't something that is recurring. So strategically, that's the question. So my question would be, all right, what is causing the immune system to be worn down? Okay, so we have a positive FRAT test. All right, so that means there are autoantibodies in the brain that is blocking and inhibiting folate to be utilized. So autoantibodies means the immune system is overactive, right? And it's really interfering with functioning. So when you give leucovorin or 5-MTHF, you're just basically, you can think of it as like hacking the system, right? You're just saying, all right, I'm just going to provide so much more folate that we're just going to overcome these autoantibodies. The folate and the leucovorin, it's not doing anything to decrease the autoantibodies. It's not doing anything to change that status. So one thing that wasn't mentioned here at all, which is important, is diet. And I know that may not be everyone's favorite thing to do, but strategy-wise and long-term wise, diet is really important. So typically the number one diet recommendation that doctors make when the FRAT is positive is to stop the dairy. All dairy, 100%, top to bottom, no ice cream, cow's milk ice cream, no regular cow's milk, no cheese, no even aged cheese, right? Like all this kind of stuff. Because sometimes there is that allergy to the cow's milk that then causes the body to go more into like that inflammation zone, and that's when the body starts getting confused as to what is the enemy, and it creates autoantibodies. So again, strategy wise, that is where I would start looking at, okay, what are the reasons based upon the data that you already have, right? I don't want to suggest, okay, yeah, let's do 20 different tests and stuff like that, because how much is that really going to get you? And you don't ever want to get into that panicky mode, like, oh my gosh, I gotta, and I speak from experience. So in the beginning, almost a decade ago, over a decade ago, I remember that panic mode, okay, and I was like, I'm going to do anything and everything, and like, that's not strategic, right? And so the whole idea is to use what you have, use the testing you have as data, and build your strategy from that, right? So that's how I would loop in the FRAT test and diet, and really trying to look at, okay, what is causing this immune system to be overwhelmed, right? Because you have confirmation from that from the FRAT test, right? Because it was positive, and then you also have confirmation just in experience, right? When the child gets sick, there's a regression and it lasts like 2 months. That's a really long regression, right? So you have confirmation just in the child's health and in their abilities and their symptoms and their enjoyment in life. So how to strengthen the immune system from a strategic standpoint would be look at what is causing it, right? To be worn down. So that would be my long-term strategy thinking. So in the moment though, right, how do you strengthen the immune system without 100 supplements? So turmeric is something that lots of doctors love to recommend. The thing is, the bioavailability it's not very good. And there's different brands and things like that, and some are more bioavailable than others, but it really takes a lot. There's different tinctures. So sometimes parents like the tinctures because you just put it in the drink. It doesn't change the flavor of the drink all that much. So turmeric is one of the top things done, although again, like I said, bioavailability is not the best. Fish oils is one of the best. However, when you're in that state of inflammation caused from the sickness, right? Things just kind of, it really in the inflammation area, you're going to have to take a lot of fish oil. Now, fish oil, I have to say, I take fish oil every day and I don't really like it. I think those pills are big. I do have different videos on the different brands. So I use the Nordic Naturals. It's got a yellow label, just because it requires the least amount of pills and you get the most fish oil. And you might end up having to take, if you take normally 2 capsules, you might have to take 6 or sometimes 8 when you're in that sense of immune and inflammation. So fish oil is great. You can get the liquid kind for your child, but a lot of times, I hear back from parents, my kid doesn't like fish oils. So that's one of the great things to do, but I understand it's not necessarily the easiest. Different things like zinc definitely help, but usually zinc is in combination with other things, right? So it's not something that is singularly taken, whereas like the fish oil, you can really take that. You can also take SPMs, so you could take some fish oil and some SPMs. SPMs are smaller. I like them because they're smaller. So that way you can take, keep the standard fish oil dosage that your child is getting and maybe add some SPM. Again, it depends on the flare and the amount of inflammation. There's also ALA. Alpha lipoic acid, that is also done. A lot of times that also is in combination with the fish oils. But those would be some of your top ones. And quercetin, that's another one. So those would be your top. When you have intense inflammation like that, you are going to need supplements. So not 100, but and there's kind of an ebb and a flow. So once you start to get to know your child's symptoms, right, and you see a cold starting to come on, you don't wait until they're sick and they've regressed. Like you start to be proactive as much as possible and step in, because also then you have confidence, right? So if you're working with a great doctor and you understand the chemistry and you have a full understanding of the test results that are in front of you, and you're not questioning yourself so much, like, oh, should I do this? Should I not? Should I do this? Right? Like that mental exhaustion is real. So when you have more confidence in what you're doing, you will see it sooner. And you'll say, all right, I'm going to step in with some of these things. And each child responds sometimes differently to each one. So you might know, like, oh yeah, my child, fish oil really works for them. So we're gonna start that. I'm starting to see just like a little bit of a sniffle, or maybe the other sibling, or you hear the teachers talk, oh, there's a cold going around. Like that's the time to be more proactive. But again, that comes from understanding the chemistry and having that good strategy. Right? So your strategy there is like, I'm not going to let this inflammation get out of control. I'm going to be proactive. Okay, so hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. Then the question was, another question from the parent was, how to modulate an immune system, which is a great question. So, right, and that's natural. Okay, my child's immune system is overactive. How can I shift that, right? And that gets done, but typically not until you understand what is causing the immune system to really be worn down. And I've seen many instances where things like low-dose naltrexone was given before the cause of that overactive immune system was resolved, and that typically does not go well. So you see different reactions, negative reactions, right? So where then the parents will say, oh no, low-dose naltrexone, that stuff is terrible. It caused XYZ, right? But strategy-wise, it wasn't appropriate at that time, right? So you don't ever want to give your child something to force its immune system to like shift off and say, okay, you're not under attack anymore. Like shift, let's modulate, right? When it's literally still under attack. So again, this comes from strategy. So I wouldn't recommend modulating the immune system until you have a full understanding of what is really attacking it, what is really causing the immune system to be overactive, because there's some reason. And so you want to get at that first. So low-dose naltrexone, once you get there, low-dose naltrexone is something that's used quite a bit. There are other prescriptions that are available, some that are used more longer term, but really you want to get an understanding and isolate the cause for that inflammation and that immune system being overactive before shifting it. So that's just a strategy standpoint. Okay, other ways to decrease inflammation. So long term, a lot of times I do see things like Celebrex used. Ibuprofen definitely can be used, really not long and not in super high doses. I've seen a lot of doctors who use ibuprofen just as a probe. So like a 1 week probe, give the child ibuprofen every day for 1 week, see what really changes. Because then you get a better handle on inflammation and what behaviors are being caused by inflammation. Is inflammation really the root at some of these other symptoms, right? So if the person takes ibuprofen for a week and there's not much of a change, then you would say, okay, maybe from a strategy standpoint, inflammation might not be at the top of my list of things to resolve, because ibuprofen is a pretty strong anti-inflammatory. So if you don't see any change after a week, then typically you really have to go back and think, okay, strategy wise, what could be causing certain behaviors? So that is how you want to handle inflammation. And I know ibuprofen is popular, but it's not something that is for long-term use. And that leads me right into the next area of anti-inflammatories, which are peptides. So peptides are on the new-ish side. So some doctors don't really like using them. Some doctors will use them only after other things have been exhausted. Only a few doctors use them as like the first kind of go-to. They are expensive. So sometimes some peptides cost $1,200 a month. So there certainly is an expense there. Many of them are used for decreasing inflammation. So they're certainly valid. Just because something is expensive doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. You just really want to have your strategy aligned, right? So let's just give it for instance, right? So maybe this parent, maybe another question of the parent would be, can I use BPC 157, which is a peptide that is really known for anti-inflammatory properties, right? So would I do that before getting confirmation that decreasing inflammation really has a big impact, especially on the symptoms that are important? That's the other thing we haven't really discussed, is when you make these decisions, when you decide what test to order, when you decide what supplements to give, right? You want to keep in mind what is the number one, maybe number two issue that you're trying to resolve, right? Because if you're putting a lot of focus on, let's say, stimming, right? And let's say that's what the doctor sees, right? So they're starting to formulate their tactics and strategy on, okay, let's stop the stimming, maybe rocking or stuff like that, so the child can focus more in class. However, maybe in family life, transitions being really difficult is the number one concern. You want to build your strategy based upon your concern. So I don't have much of the concerns from these two parents. They didn't give me too much detail on like, this is the one thing that would really help my child and our family if we can resolve this, right? Like that would help open them up. Those are the things that I really like to focus on when working with parents. And I do have a platform that we've built out, and I'm working with parents directly on that to teach them the strategy and the tactics. So actually, if you're interested in that, let me just put a link to, you could check out. Okay, so I just put a link to a page that if you want to find out more information about the platform that we have been building, where it teaches parents the strategy and the tactics, How do you have focus? How do you have focus so you can make that change for what's important to you? That's the really important thing. So when you're addressing all these things, starting to isolate what would help the child thrive the most. That's usually where I like to put the focus on, so that it's meaningful change, not just change like, yeah, this got better, but that doesn't really matter. You know, that's certainly not what you want to do. So certainly check out that link if you're interested in finding out more about that. Let's go back to here. Oh, BPC 157 is an injectable. You can get it in oral form, but typically the injectable is stronger, right? It's so that's another concern. So when you're trying to figure out what it is that you're going to focus on and spend money on, right? So would I spend $1,200 on injectable BPC 157 as like the first thing to do? No, absolutely not. That's where building that strategy comes from. Okay, let's see. I think that there was one other question from the parent. When FRAT is positive, should all neurotransmitters be unbalanced in the OAT? And it's two different things to think about in that sense. Okay, so the FRAT is saying that, yes, we have, when the FRAT is positive, yes, we have autoantibodies in the brain that is actively blocking folate to being utilized by the brain, right? And then when you do an OAT test and you're looking at the neurotransmitter broken down there, it's not necessarily the same thing, right? So the neurotransmitters balance that you see, and there's a few in the OAT test, you can't say that that's exactly what's going on in the brain. So it's in the gut, it's a urine test. So many times in the beginning, and again, I don't know exactly how many times they've done the OAT, what else they've resolved on the OAT, and all of that. But many times when doctors are looking at the OAT, they're not going to line item address neurotransmitter imbalance. Typically, I have seen some doctors say, okay, you know, let's give the child some GABA, but that's a short-term tactic. And usually it's at the request of the parent, you know, saying, I need a little relief. I need a little moment of peace, something like that. So typically when you do the OAT and you get the OAT results back, neurotransmitters is not something you line item like supplement or address. A lot of times you're looking at whatever else is going on in the OAT. And as you resolve those issues there, then you really look at neurotransmitters and see, okay, how are they coming back? Are they coming back into balance? Like I said, you can short-term give neurotransmitters, but it's not a long-term solution. Again, so, and there's nothing wrong with short-term solutions, right? Melatonin is a fantastic short-term solution for sleep issues, right? There is absolutely nothing wrong with thinking short term, right? Like, I need to sleep. I need some relief now. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. However, you also want to have that then long-term strategy focus of, okay, what is causing it? How can we get on top of that? How can we make sure they can get sleep when we're not giving melatonin, right? So it's okay to have both. The short term, I need some relief now, and the long term, let's figure it out so that we don't need all these supplements. That's totally fine and totally doable, and I think it's great, right? But it takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of planning. It takes, you know, taking time away from all the hecticness of work and family and church and volunteering and sports and everything to say, all right, I'm just going to sit and work on strategy, right? So I definitely understand that. All right, so that would be my answer for that. And let's see. Oh, we have some questions. I only have about a minute left. I only scheduled this for 30 minutes. Okay, lion's mane, I actually have a video coming out in a week or two that goes into lion's mane. There's definitely interesting aspects to Lion's Mane. I know it's hugely popular on TikTok. So actually that's the reason why I made a YouTube video for that, to break down the science. So just keep your eyes posted for that. What can you do diet-wise if the child is a very picky eater? Find out the chemistry reason why your child is a picky eater. If you just try and muscle through that picky eating, it's going to be exhausting. You're not going to have fun. They're not going to have fun. You're going to start creating like some real animosity. Nobody's going to look forward to dinner or anything like that. So with picky eating, the question for me is always, what is causing that pickiness, right? Different infections cause pickiness, different nutritional imbalances, right? But I mean, get into like a catch-22, but you can do some testing to see, okay, what are the nutritional deficiencies, go in there. So strategy-wise, picky eating is always, what is the cause? Why is that happening? And really getting at that. You can do some short-term like shakes and things like that, multivitamins, but that's not a long-term solution. So that would be how strategy-wise I would start looking at picky eating. Let's see. I think there are a few other comments. I will look them over, and maybe that's what the next live will be. So I definitely really appreciate you being here. Again, check out our community. I speak fluent meltdown. I am super proud of the fact that I do speak fluent meltdown. It's not something I ever thought I would acquire as a skill, but I have it, and I'm sure many of you do too. Let's see. So how can I work with you? Send you an email? You can certainly send me an email, but there is, I'll put the link again down there. You can check out that page right now. And the platform, I really love working with parents on the platform. And it's in the beginning stages of growing. So I'm like hands-on with everyone. So definitely look at the different ways there are to work with me. And I certainly welcome you. All right, have a good day. Keep the comments coming, keep the questions coming. Let me know what videos you want, because I'm here to help as much as I can. I hope you have a great day. All right, bye.